The sound of screeching tires pierced the twilight air, followed by the sickening crunch of metal meeting concrete. In that frozen moment, as Marcus Thornfield's $300,000 sports car wrapped itself around a telephone pole on Madison Avenue, the billionaire's perfectly controlled world shattered into 1,000 pieces. Blood trickled down his temple. His chest refused to rise. And in the gathering crowd of horrified onlookers pulling out their phones to record rather than help, two figures moved against the tide, barefoot, unwashed, wearing clothes held together by hope and safety pins. Sisters. Twins. Invisible to everyone who mattered in this city. Until now. Maya pressed her fingers against the unconscious man's neck, searching desperately for a pulse she wasn't sure she'd find. Beside her, Mira was already on her knees, tilting his head back, checking his airway with the kind of practiced efficiency that seemed impossible for someone living under a bridge. But the sisters had learned long ago that survival demanded skills most people never needed. Medical training from a past life, before addiction destroyed their mother, before the foster homes, before the streets claimed them, now surged back through muscle memory. "He's not breathing," Maya whispered, her voice cracking. "Mira, he's not breathing." "Then we make him breathe," Mira replied, her hands already positioned over his sternum. She began compressions, counting under her breath, while Maya tilted Marcus's head and prepared to give rescue breaths. Around them, the crowd murmured. Someone laughed nervously. Another voice called out, "Don't touch him. You'll get sued." But the sisters had nothing left to lose, which made them the richest people on that street corner. 30 compressions. 2 breaths. 30 compressions. 2 breaths. Maya's lips touched the stranger's, breathing life into lungs that had forgotten how to work. She tasted blood and gasoline, fear and desperation. Mira's arms burned with effort, but she didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Because somewhere in the chaos of their shattered lives, they'd held on to one crucial truth: every life mattered. Even the life of a man who probably wouldn't have noticed them if he'd passed them on the street an hour ago. "Come on," Mira pleaded through gritted teeth. "Come on, breathe, please breathe." Sirens wailed in the distance, but distance meant minutes, and minutes meant death. Maya breathed again into Marcus's mouth, willing oxygen into his starved brain, begging his body to remember what it was made to do. Mira's compressions grew more frantic, more desperate. Their ragged clothes were soaked with sweat and the stranger's blood. Their faces were streaked with tears neither remembered crying. And then, a gasp. Wet, rattling, beautiful. Marcus Thornfield's chest heaved as his lungs clawed for air. His eyes flew open, unfocused and terrified, staring up at two faces haloed by streetlights and compassion. He tried to speak but could only cough, his body convulsing as it fought its way back to life. "Don't move," Maya soothed, her hand gentle on his shoulder. "You were in an accident. Help is coming. You're okay. You're going to be okay." Paramedics arrived in a flurry of urgent voices and efficient movement, taking over with equipment and expertise. They loaded Marcus onto a stretcher, asking questions he couldn't yet answer, stabilizing a man who'd been dead less than 3 minutes ago. In the confusion, Maya and Mira stepped back, melting into the shadows the way they'd learned to do. Their work was finished. They'd done what anyone should do. What so few actually would. "Wait." Marcus's voice was hoarse, desperate, as the paramedics lifted his stretcher. His hand shot out, grabbing at air, searching for something he couldn't name. "The women. Where are they?" The 2 women who, but when his eyes found the spot where the twins had been, there was only empty pavement and indifferent strangers already walking away, the entertainment over. 3 days later, Marcus Thornfield sat in a private hospital room that cost more per night than most people earned in a month, alive because 2 homeless women had cared more about his life than his entire circle of wealthy acquaintances. The doctors had been clear. Without immediate CPR, he would have died or suffered irreversible brain damage before the ambulance arrived. Someone had saved him. 2 someones. And he had no idea who they were. Security footage showed them clearly, thin, dirty, wearing clothes that should have been thrown away months ago. The video captured their desperate focus, their trained movements, their tears. It captured them saving a stranger's life without hesitation, without thought for reward. And then walking away into the night like guardian angels with nowhere to go. Marcus had built an empire on ruthless efficiency, on knowing exactly what everything and everyone was worth. He'd fired employees the day before Christmas because the numbers demanded it. He'd closed factories and shattered communities because shareholders expected returns. He'd passed homeless people every day without seeing them, without acknowledging that the hands reaching out for spare change were attached to actual human beings with stories and sorrows and skills. Now 2 of those invisible people had given him back his life. "Find them," he told his assistant, his voice still rough from the breathing tube. "I don't care what it costs. Find them." The search took 6 days. 6 days of private investigators combing the streets, showing photos to shelter workers and soup kitchen volunteers, tracking down leads that went nowhere. The twins were ghosts, survivors who'd learned not to leave traces. They avoided shelters after an assault 3 years ago. They stayed away from places where police might ask questions. They existed in the cracks of the city, in the spaces between society's attention. Finally, a caseworker at a community health clinic recognized them from the security footage. "Maya and Mira Santos," she said softly. "They come in sometimes for basic medical care. Brilliant girls. Both were in pre-med programs before their lives fell apart. Their mother died of an overdose when they were 19. No other family. The system failed them, and they've been on the streets ever since. That's 4 years of surviving hell." Marcus found them in a small encampment under the Williamsburg Bridge, huddled together for warmth beneath a threadbare blanket, their few possessions packed into shopping carts. They looked up at the approaching stranger with the wary eyes of people who'd learned that attention from the wealthy usually meant trouble. "I've been looking for you," Marcus said simply, crouching down to their level, his expensive suit incongruous against the dirt and concrete. "You saved my life." Maya and Mira exchanged glances, some silent twin communication passing between them. "We just did what anyone should do," Maya finally replied, her voice defensive, proud despite everything. "You don't owe us anything. Anyone should do it," Marcus agreed, his throat tight. "But everyone else just watched. They recorded. They posted it on social media. You 2 are the only ones who actually helped." He paused, struggling with emotions he'd spent decades suppressing. "You gave me back my life. Please, let me give you back yours." That's when Marcus learned that saving someone's life was easier than earning their trust. The sisters had been burned too many times, had too many experiences with promises that turned to ash. They refused his offer of a hotel room, suspicious of motives they couldn't understand. Why would a billionaire care about 2 homeless women? What did he really want? So Marcus came back the next day. And the next. He brought food. Real food from restaurants, not handouts, and ate with them under the bridge. He listened to their story without interrupting, without judging, without the impatience that usually colored his interactions. He heard about the mother who'd fought addiction and lost. About foster homes that separated the twins and broke something fundamental inside them. About the aged out of the system at 18, drowning in college debt they couldn't repay when everything fell apart. About the descent from student housing to couch surfing to shelters to the streets. He learned that Maya wanted to be a pediatrician and could still recite the bones of the human body in perfect order. That Mira had been studying emergency medicine and could calculate drug dosages in her head. That they'd kept each other alive through 4 winters, through assaults and sickness and the kind of despair that swallows people whole. That they'd never stopped being the women who would drop everything to save a stranger's life. On the 5th day, Marcus brought someone with him. Drive. Sarah Chen, the chief of emergency medicine at Manhattan General. "I saw the security footage. Drive," Chen said, sitting down on the cold concrete as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "Your CPR technique was textbook perfect. Where did you learn?" The conversation that followed changed everything. "Doctor." Chen didn't offer pity. She offered opportunity. The hospital needed EMT training volunteers, she explained. It paid. Not much, but enough. And if they were interested, if they were willing, there might be a path back to medical school. Scholarships existed. Programs for non-traditional students. Second chances for people who'd been knocked down by life but hadn't stopped fighting. That night, Maya and Mira slept in a warm apartment that Marcus had leased for them. A 1-year lease, paid in full, with no strings attached except one request, that they keep moving forward. Keep surviving. Keep being the kind of people who see someone dying and run toward them instead of away. 6 months later, Marcus Thornfield stood at the back of a hospital auditorium, watching Maya and Mira Santos receive their EMT certifications. They were clean, healthy, glowing with the kind of hope he'd almost forgotten existed. They were enrolled in community college, taking prerequisites for medical school. They were volunteering at the same community health clinic that had once treated them. They were building the lives they'd dreamed of before the world had told them they didn't matter. Marcus had changed too. The near-death experience had cracked something open inside him, some calcified part of his heart that had forgotten how to feel. He'd started a foundation funding medical education for homeless youth. He'd hired formerly homeless people at his companies, giving them chances no one else would. He'd begun seeing the invisible people on the streets, really seeing them, understanding that the only difference between him and them was luck and circumstance. But more than that, he'd learned a truth that all his billions had obscured. That humanity isn't measured by what you accumulate but by what you're willing to give. That the poorest people he'd ever met had been the richest in the ways that actually mattered. That two women with nothing had possessed everything he'd been missing: compassion, courage, and the simple understanding that we're all connected, all responsible for each other, all capable of either saving or destroying each other with our choices. As Maya and Mira crossed the stage to accept their certificates, the applause thundering around them, Marcus felt tears streaming down his face. He'd spent 45 years learning how to breathe, and two homeless women had taught him in a single night. They'd given him back his life, and in return, he'd helped give them back theirs. But the truth was simpler and more profound than any transaction. They'd saved each other, and in doing so, they'd proven that miracles don't come from heaven or wealth or power. They come from the outstretched hands of people who still believe, despite everything, that every life is worth saving. Even the ones the world has forgotten. Especially those